Nate embodies everything that the Pillar of the Valley Award stands for.
He was a massive source of influence within this community.
He grew up in Salt Lake area. He had his 3 siblings, his parents. He was kind of a little bit of a wild child.
People that know Nate know that he was very driven and motivated. And I think that all started at age 14 when he had this little audio tape that he listened to, and it was on goal setting. He took it to heart, and it talked about writing your goals down, reading them, and the sky was the limit. So he literally got a notepad and he just went crazy writing every possible scenario that he could think of that he wanted to accomplish in his life. When we moved from Salt Lake to St. George when he was 40, he found that little notebook and he looked at the list and he had accomplished everything except one thing, and he did that 5 years later. He always would say, a goal not written down is only a wish.
As he got into high school, he really wanted to play football at Olympus High School, and the only position that was available was center. He was a skinny, scrawny kid.
He would pound eggs and tuna and anything he could get his hands on to bulk up and get bigger, and ended up playing football for BYU as a center, which is pretty crazy.
I think his principal driver was Joyce Ricks. Those two had a relationship that was quite special and quite unique.
Nathan and I met in high school, and we started dating our junior year in high school, and so we kind of became high school sweethearts, and we got married about 6 years later, and we were blessed with 4 beautiful daughters.
He had girls for a reason because he was kind of intense, and we kind of all softened him a little bit. He was, whatever he decided to do, it was 150%.
He started getting into sales and eventually ended up at Nu Skin.
To say that Nathan Ricks was a marketer would be such an understatement because he's so much more than that. But he was involved in building and creating a company that, over the past 40 years or so has sold something like $40 billion worth of products.
And ended up building an incredible team all over the world and started One Team Global. That was a nonprofit group where they developed these incredible leaders that taught them how to grow their business.
He had a funny thing he would say, the training doesn't work, work trains. He probably worked his way into everything all of the skills that he had.
Public speaking was really, really tough for him, and most people that saw my dad speak would never know that was one of his biggest struggles early on in his career.
He had a lot of anxiety over that, and he actually would have sweat attacks. He would sweat profusely, like the people would bring him towels. It was so bad.
He worked his whole life at that, and he became, honestly, a phenomenal speaker.
He was such a natural leader that others followed him. He just had that magnetism about him.
I've never met someone who was so tenacious, who was so focused, but who was also so compassionate about helping people to achieve what he knew was best for them.
Nathan spoke about, taught, and really coached based on what he was doing. He preached what he practiced.
So he was never afraid to share his beliefs. One of his most powerful speeches was he talked about being a finisher in the business world, right? Like making sure you're a finisher. And then he would tie it back to Jesus Christ being the ultimate finisher. People always respected him because he was not afraid to share what he believed.
My first time in his private plane, I was blown away. He was telling me about the plane, showing me all the buttons and the technology, and I could tell he was just obsessed about it, like a very big passion of his. And he turns to me and he says, "Isn't this amazing that we get to do this? We are so blessed." And that was a really impactful moment for me, because here's this guy who, by the world's standards, had everything you could ask for, and he still knew the source from which all of his blessings came from.
One of his goals at 14 was to have a family ranch.
So my parents purchased a ranch when I was 9 years old. It was kind of a little bit of a rundown old sheep farm. And over the course of 25 years, they've They improved it, worked it.
At the ranch, we just created so many memories, and so many different youth groups would come up, and so many different New Skin groups and just groups of people.
At the ranch, we kind of had this tradition of making homemade ice cream, and we had this old, slow churning ice cream maker that he loved to do with the grandkids.
It was pretty common to find a child on a saddle with my dad on a horseback ride, or he'd be swinging them around with their arms.
But he was very fun and very funny and silly at times. When you got him laughing, he would be rolling.
He was all about making this place where we live better. That was the legacy that he wanted to leave.
And he always believed in Utah and the future that we could create here.
He loved to see people succeed, and I think real estate was just one more way of housing people's success. I think all you have to do is look across I-15 at all the physical assets that he created through a real estate empire that frankly very few people even knew about.
He got really into creating these smart communities with like mixed housing and office buildings, just everything mixed use that was close to transit and designed beautifully.
And much of the development in Utah County that he was involved with came from his vision of what should happen.
And then at the end, one of the last things he did was the Tree of Life at the Ashton Gardens.
If you travel to Ashton Gardens, you'll see the Tree of Life exhibit. That would not exist without Nathan Ricks. He had this magic for just getting things done.
His plane crashed on takeoff here at the Provo airport. There were 3 other passengers. Jet crashes like this, rarely are there any survivors. And what we've been told by the investigators and other, experts in the space is that Nathan did something to save those other 3 passengers. And that cost Nathan his life. Yet Joyce and the other 2 men, they're walking around today because of what Nathan did. And even till his last seconds, he gave everything that he had for others.
I have heard a number of people talk about Nathan in terms of, literally saving their lives, literally saving their careers, literally saving their marriages. And this is a lotion salesman, right? He's just out trying to sell lotion. But in the course of that, it was always about so much more. He was about people.
I think when you live a life full of intention and focus on the Savior, you can't help but leave a legacy with those who've come in contact with you. He was an exceptional person because he was so principled.
There hasn't been a day since Nathan passed that I haven't thought about the good that he did for us and for our community. He left a big hole, but he left a legacy too. He is a pillar of the valley.